All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. If you're a parent or an educator tuning in, you're obviously here because you care deeply about unlocking a child's true potential. I'm going to be speaking with you today from the perspective of our expert clinical team at Next Level Speech and Physiotherapy Center right here in Dubai. Over the past 11+ years, we've had the absolute privilege of supporting over 7,000 children and their families, really helping them navigate some pretty complex developmental hurdles. And one of the most common, yet completely misunderstood challenges we see at our clinic is what we like to call the hidden language gap. So let's break down what that actually means for your child.
You know, this is the exact question that brings so many frustrated families through our doors. Your child is incredibly bright. You know it, their teacher knows it. They might be super creative, maybe they build these amazing, complex Lego structures, or they have a brilliant sense of humor. But then, you sit down for homework, and suddenly, reading feels like this huge mountain they have to push through every single day. Writing takes twice as long as it should. Or maybe following along in a lesson when the teacher is giving quick verbal instructions is just incredibly hard for them. It's a deeply frustrating experience for everyone, but especially for the child.
Section 1. The presenting problem. This is what it looks like when a child's intelligence and their classroom performance simply don't align. What we consistently find with the families visiting our JBR clinic is that a really painful gap starts to emerge. Your child is sitting there, looking around the classroom, and they're starting to notice the distance between themselves and their friends. They start wondering, why is it taking me so much more effort to get the exact same results? Well, the crucial takeaway here is this. The difficulty isn't intelligence, it is language. For a lot of school-age kids, it's specifically those foundational language skills that underpin reading, writing, and classroom communication. These are skills that may be developed a bit differently or just a little more slowly, and now they're quietly impacting how your child learns and, even more importantly, how they feel about themselves as a learner.
Moving on to Section 2, Building the Literacy Foundation. Let's talk about the iceberg model of reading and writing.
In our clinical experience, we often have to help parents completely shift how they view literacy. See, reading isn't just some isolated skill that magically switches on in primary school. It's more like a giant iceberg or a massive architectural structure. The academic literacy, the reading, the writing, the complex comprehension, that's just the visible tip of the iceberg. But it is built entirely upon a huge, mostly invisible foundation of spoken language. We're talking about a rich vocabulary, a solid grasp of sentence structure, and the ability to tell a good story. If a child's spoken language developed a bit slowly early on, they're basically building their academic literacy on a shaky base. When they're young, they might compensate pretty well. But as school gets harder, the cracks in that foundation will absolutely start to show.
And that brings us to a comment we hear literally all the time. Parents will say, but wait, they had a speech delay as a toddler and they caught up. Well, our 11+ years of practice consistently show something a bit different. Kids with early language delays are actually at a much higher risk of literacy struggles later on. Those underlying language processing differences didn't magically vanish. They simply weren't being tested by the heavy demands of complex formal schooling yet. Section 3. Signs to look out for. These are the specific clinical patterns we identify at Next Level.
Parents and teachers are almost always the first to sense that something's off, and I really want to emphasize, trust that instinct. Let's look at how this clinical picture usually builds. You might see reading that is slow and really effortful, or maybe they can sound out words perfectly, what we call decoding, but they have zero comprehension of what they just read. Maybe their written work doesn't even come close to reflecting how smart and articulate they are when they speak. You might notice them struggling to follow multi-step verbal instructions, actively avoiding reading aloud, or just showing frustration and low confidence that feels totally disproportionate to the task. Now listen, no single one of these signs means there's a disorder, but a persistent combination of them across the school years. That is exactly what our team looks for.
Section 4. Our custom assessment process. This is all about going beyond standard testing and treating the whole child. So if those signs sound a little too familiar, the next step is getting some clarity. At Next Level, we literally never use a generic one-size-fits-all battery of tests. Every single child is unique. Here's how we break our custom process down. Step 1 is a deep dive conversation with you, the parents, and the school. Step 2 involves tailored standardized testing mixed with naturalistic testing, basically seeing how they actually manage language in real-life contexts. But I really want to highlight Step 3, assessing their emotional confidence. Guys, a child who has spent years feeling behind carries a heavy emotional weight into every task. We absolutely have to assess and treat that self-perception right alongside their literacy skills.
And finally, step 4 is creating a coordinated support plan directly with their school. Section 5. Targeted therapy in action. Let's look at direct, goal-focused, and school-integrated support.
Okay, so once we know what's going on, how do we actually fix it? Well, our therapeutic approach strictly avoids those abstract, boring language drills, because frankly, those don't help a kid who's staring down a massive history assignment. Instead, a huge focus for us is building metacognitive awareness. That's just a fancy way of saying helping a child understand exactly how their own brain learns and processes language. School-age kids are smart. They respond amazingly well when we are totally transparent with them. Explaining exactly why we're doing a specific therapy exercise dramatically increases their buy-in, their engagement, and ultimately, their confidence.
And we really have to take this targeted approach because there is a well-meaning but incredibly harmful myth out there. Just have them read more. For a child with an underlying processing issue, asking them to just read more without support is literally like asking someone with a broken leg to walk it off. There's no way. It only increases their frustration and makes them want to avoid reading altogether. The next level approach is all about targeted therapy that treats the root cause first. Once we reinforce those foundational language skills, then all that reading practice actually becomes productive.
Section 6. Expert Insights in Multilingual Contexts, addressing Dubai's unique academic landscape and some FAQs.
Living in Dubai's incredibly diverse environment, we see kids constantly juggling English as a second, third, or even fourth language. Because of this, expert differential diagnosis is absolutely crucial. We're constantly navigating a vital distinction: the gap between conversational fluency and academic language proficiency. A child might be totally fluent chatting with their friends on the playground, using basic sentences that they picked up pretty quickly. But academic language? That demands complex textbook vocabulary, making inferences, and following tricky instructions, which takes years of formal exposure. Our team is highly experienced at spotting the difference between a normal language learning gap and a genuine underlying processing disorder. This actually ties right into one of the most frequent questions we get from parents. My child has dyslexia. Is that an educational issue or a speech therapy issue? The truth? It's both. Dyslexia has a very strong language foundation deeply rooted in phonological processing, which is the brain's ability to recognize and manipulate the sound structure of words. Speech therapists work directly on these exact skills. That's why our therapy is the absolute perfect complement to the amazing work done by special education teachers.
As we start to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a core philosophy from our clinic. Parents often panic and ask if it's too late once their child hits secondary school. The answer is an emphatic no. Whether your child is in year 3 or studying for their final secondary exams, older students can make incredible, meaningful gains with strategy-focused support. It is truly never too late to untap your child's true potential.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. If your child's effort just isn't matching their results, what invisible language barrier might be holding them back? You know your child best. If you feel like they are working way harder than they should have to, a proper assessment can finally give you the clarity you've been looking for. We warmly invite you to reach out to our dedicated team at Next Level Speech and Physiotherapy Center in JBR. Let's work together to get your family the support and the confidence they truly deserve. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and we really hope to see you soon.